Bart Freeman.
Oh, Bart Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get back for a moment to Gary Scarf, and let's go back to Guyana in November 15th, 1978, 9 years ago in about 2 weeks. You were there, not at the time that Congressman Leo Ryan and others were killed and 900 people died that terrible day at the hands of Jim Jones and others. But tell us briefly about your experience. You developed a relationship with a young lady there. You had a child. What happened?
It wasn't just a relationship with a young lady. I had a sexual relationship ongoing with Jim Jones himself because Jim demanded it of me.
Oh, wait a minute. With Jim Jones himself? How did he demand this of you? I mean, how did he put it to you?
Jim told us that he was the only true heterosexual in the church, that he was God, he was the Almighty, that all men were homosexuals, all women were lesbians. And to further pull us under his control, the humiliation, the deprivation continued, where women were having sex with other women. I was forced to have oral sex with another man in front of the congregation. It got very perverted and very deprived. And at times, I would get a telephone call from his secretary saying that Jim has a need and he wants you to fulfill it this weekend. So I would go off the weekend with him at a hotel in downtown San Francisco and have sex with him. This was required. Now, one thing that has bothered me, and something you said a while ago, really kind of bothers me, is you say, when do you decide when you're going to stay or leave? I didn't have a choice about, I didn't have a decision-making process. It wasn't free thinking there that allowed me to decide whether I was going to stay or go. I was under constant stress, constant humiliation. I was working 15 hours a day and also putting in a part-time job at Safeway, whereas all the money from my job at Safeway was going back into the church. And there was very little sleep, very little food, the isolation. I was constantly pushing the stress back inside because if I showed any emotion, I would be punished and abused for it. Those things take, effect on a person's being. And pretty soon I was not in a position to make a decision. Now, there were times that my emotions, overcame and I ran away. But I was chased down. I was brought back. We had what we called the emergency care unit, the ECU, in the church, whereas if a person was rebelling, he was drugged with amphetamines or barbs, and several members got hooked on drugs.
You say barbiturates.
Sedatives. Constantly sedated.
So at one point you decided to get out.
There was a time that I decided to get out. I got tired of being beaten. I got tired of being raped. I got tired of having my father pitted against me. I got tired of being forced in front of a congregation of 900 people and performing oral sex on a woman by a man who claims himself to be Jesus Christ. That conflicted. And I ran. I came back. And there were times that I ran, that I came back on my own, only because I knew if I was caught, it would be bad. The last time I ran, and it was the last day that I was in the temple, when I defected, I was shot. And I have a scar on my arm, which has the scar where the bullet is.
Oh, see it.
Okay, it's
This was in Jonestown?
No, this was in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, when you tried to get away.
When I ran, I was shot.
It's, I guess, astounding to us that this went on in San Francisco, a very cosmopolitan, sophisticated city, that people like you and others...
And the police were bought off by Jim Jones.
The police were bought off?
The police, the district attorney, who had good relations with Jim. Jim was a housing authority chairman. He was on very good terms with Mayor Moscone. And when Jim said that I control these people... He didn't control them, but you can bet that if I went to complain to the district attorney's office, that it got nowhere. And several people did file charges against Jim, and it was all thrown out.
As I recall, he was looked upon as really part of the semi-city establishment back in San Francisco in the late 70s. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
He's not considered to be a bad guy.
No, in fact, the politicians that really did not appreciate him did not speak out against him because they knew that they had to count on his vote. That was 900 to 1,000 votes.
Our time is rapidly expiring. Tell us about the relationship with the lady and what happened to her and the child.
When I was in the temple, I had a close friendship with a lady. I will not mention her name. I got her pregnant. It was my child. Jim disrupted relationships. He would not allow sex to take place unless he called for it. She went to Guyana, as well as did my young son. And my father, of course, went down to Guyana. They all perished, all three.
But they were murdered by Jim Jones?
Committed suicide.
Committed suicide. Wish we had more time. As I mentioned earlier, this is Cult Awareness Week, and if anything will make you aware, by the way, here's a number you might like to get in touch. It's Cult Awareness, a network hotline at 486-7117. The national number in Chicago is area 312-267-7777. Thank you all for being with us, and food for thought. It is Cult Awareness Week. Beware of those people who try to be too nice. Thanks again, and have a nice weekend.